Real quickly before we begin, I want to thank this video's sponsor, CarMarshal.com. CarMarshal.com can save you lots of money on buying used or new vehicles, cars, trucks, school buses. If you want to save money, I'll have a link in the description down below. I know I'm going to
Video catches cops drag innocent disabled man from home, torture him in his front yard. Police were caught on surveillance camera dragging an elderly, disabled man from his home and then beating him with a baton, taunting him, and covering his face with pepper spray. By Jack Burns, April 4, 2018. Horrifying surveillance footage has been released that shows multiple police officers aggressively assaulting and torturing a disabled man in his front yard after they dragged him from his home during a welfare check. John, a retiree in Melbourne, Australia, was supposed to be enjoying his golden years in peace, but after his psychologist called the Australian equivalent of 911, all hell broke loose. Victoria Police arrived to presumably perform an unwanted welfare check. When John refused to speak with the officers, they dragged him into the yard and beat him, pepper sprayed him, and then hosed him down with his own water hose, all while mocking him. The entire incident was caught on video recording principally because the homeowner had installed a surveillance system after his house was previously burglarized. In the graphic video, Victoria Police can be heard taunting the elderly man, cursing at him, beating him in the legs with their batons and covering his face with pepper spray. "You fucking idiot, you like that, smells good, doesn't it?" the officers mocked him. The man, who suffers from a bad back and emotional distress, can be heard screaming "my back," as the pack of officers manhandle him. The officers' true intentions were revealed when they were presumably attempting to wash off the pepper spray with which they had filled his face. When the one officer with the hose started applying the water, the nozzle setting was set to hose. Later, the setting was changed to spray, and a solid stream of water was applied to the man's head and face, likely injuring John further. When the officer with the hose noticed his fellow officer was recording with his cell phone, he stepped back, as if to imply by his actions that he did not want to be caught on camera abusing the man. But caught on camera, he was just not the one he believed his colleague was holding. Upon the arrest, officers charged the man with assault, but the recording tells a much different story. Not only did the man not call authorities, he asked them several times to leave him in peace. When he refused to comply with their unlawful orders, the man was violently mistreated. Officials and politicians weighed in on the attack. Opposition leader Matthew Guy told reporters, "All Victorians will be outraged by it," and called the actions of the police officers abhorrent. The Independent Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission, IBAC, issued the following statement. Victoria Police, as their employer, is responsible for determining whether the officers are stood down from policing duties while they are subject to investigation. Acting Commissioner Luke Cornelius called the CCTV concerning and said, "Sunlight is the best disinfectant," welcoming external scrutiny of his department's actions in John's case. "Our practice is we conduct an initial inquiry," Cornelius said. "It is too early at this stage to form an opinion of whether they should be stood down." Although his public statements welcomed the unwanted attention to the alleged abuse, Cornelius did say it was concerning that the incident was reported directly to IBAC, instead of Victoria Police. "We welcome external scrutiny, and welcome the concerns the wider community may have," Cornelius stated. But whether or not any disciplinary action or restitution will be made to John remains to be seen. Victoria Police responded with their own statement provided to 9 News, claiming their department has no tolerance for poor behavior within its ranks. "Our officers make mistakes like anyone else, and when that happens, we learn from that." Premier Daniel Andrews said he has not watched the footage, but he defended the Victoria Police Force. Victoria Police, as the nation's best police force, conduct themselves with professionalism and, in my experience, proportionate to the risk that they face, he said. This professionalism can be seen below.
It's early evening in September 2017. 3 police cars pull up outside a house in Melbourne's northern suburbs. The disability pensioner inside the house is mentally ill and very distressed. He's been withdrawing from the pain medication prescribed after back surgery. John's medical carers have called police, worried at his deteriorating state. Police dispatch notes warn John may confront them and try to provoke them into shooting him. He also has a minor assault on his record from 10 years ago. But from behind his locked screen door, he repeatedly pleads with them to leave him alone.
No, please leave. I don't want a fucking dog! Fuck off! Fuck off! Get off my fucking property!
Not gonna happen, mate. Open the door. Mate, you don't want to break open the door.
I don't want to. I'm going for withdrawal.
Come on, John. Just want to have a show.
No, I can't. I'm alright. I just got to get through this. Alright? Get the crowbar and you have to shoot me.
Come on, John.
The police notes state that when John opened the door, he came at them with 2 raised fists. But the video appears to show him fending off an officer coming at him with capsicum spray. John has asked not to be fully identified. Do you remember being hit?
Not really, no. I felt everything the next day, but it was more from the withdrawal and then the incident that just, I went into like shock, basically. That's the word, shock.
While police pin him down, one strikes John's calf with a baton. He is punched, and his face is again sprayed with capsicum at close range.
You like that? Oh, you like that? It smells good, doesn't it? Oh, it's a fucking hand behind your fucking back.
Oh, my back!
Get your hand behind your
My
back.
back!
He had committed no crime. They were here for a welfare check, and for him to be treated in that way is humiliating and at the end of the day quite degrading for anyone, let alone someone who has mental health issues and really had committed no crime.
No one!
An officer gets a hose to wash the pepper spray off John's face, aiming a jet of water at his eyes.
I thought I was going to die. I really literally thought I was going to drown. Like, I don't know, it's all gurgling, like you can feel the mace and the water together in your lungs. It's just, it's a weird feeling and it's hard to explain.
You happy? You happy? You're a disabled person. Yeah, how tough are you?
An officer appears to direct his colleague to spray John a 3rd time, so he can capture it on his mobile phone camera.
It was like a game for them. They wanted to get their rocks off, you know. I don't know. I really don't know why, you know.
John's lawyer says that what is unusual about his treatment here in his front yard is not that it occurred. It's that it was captured on CCTV, a system John installed after he was burgled. John's lawyer also says that it's telling that some of what you see in the vision was never recorded in the police reports of the incident. Not one of these officers raised any concerns about what happened in the post-incident reports.
What John's case highlights, though, is that these things do occur, and he obviously has the evidence to be able to back it up.
You've told John not to bother interacting with the police complaints system. Why is that?
Well, the police complaint system has an extraordinarily low substantiation rate. I think it's something like 9% substantiation rate was found in an IBAC audit. So I just don't think for John that really there's going to be any meaningful change if he were to complain to the police directly. I would be concerned about the investigation, about him giving a statement, about the effect on him, and then ultimately my suspicion would be that they would find it to be unsubstantiated, and that would just cause him further distress.
Victoria's police complaints system is in crisis. The state's Independent Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission, or IBAC, has made multiple criticisms, from the low number of complaints that are upheld to the force's failure to weed out repeat offenders. Last week it produced another report criticising the way police handle internal investigations of serious incidents, including that it fails to consider relevant evidence and gives too much weight to police testimony over independent witnesses.
A lot of the time people don't want to complain directly to the police because they're worried about the inherent conflict in complaining to police and police investigating their own. But then the problem is they complain to IBAC, and IBAC refers over 90% of those back to the police to complain.
There's conflict of interest everywhere. It's a question of how you manage the conflict of interest.
Former Judge Michael Strong was the head of Victoria's Office of Police Integrity until its functions were absorbed into the IBAC.
The only way you could remove all potential conflict of interest is to have every complaint against police investigated by an independent agency. I would like to see more of the more serious complaints against police independently investigated, but that's a resourcing issue.
In the heat of confronting a violent criminal, the line between reasonable and excessive force can be difficult to define. This 23-year-old is trying to hold up a pharmacy in Melbourne's north with a pair of scissors. He's having a psychotic episode and has already violently assaulted 4 people outside. When bystanders try to take him down, one receives a wound to his head. Finally, police arrive, and this is where lawyers say police cross the line. He no longer has the scissors he's been using as a weapon. He's face down on the floor and is punched repeatedly as police try to put him in handcuffs. He's kicked to the head. Then the officer pulls out his baton and hammers it down. More police arrive and he is handcuffed, but then the officer stomps on his back. Minutes later, he kicks out at the officer and is thrown to the ground. He later pleaded guilty to armed robbery and assault and was last year jailed for 2 years and 9 months. His lawyer, Natasha Wallen, says a complaint of excessive force was lodged with Victoria Police's Professional Standards Command.
He suffered significant facial injuries. Most of his teeth were snapped. He's got ongoing back issues. He was taken to hospital directly after the incident because he wasn't deemed to be fit enough to be in police custody.
The complaint was dismissed. At the time, the officer in charge of professional standards was Assistant Commissioner Brett Guerin, who quit the force in disgrace in February after it was revealed he'd used a fake identity to post violent and racist rants online. Many may find it difficult to have much sympathy for a violent offender who assaulted members of the public and threatened shop staff. But the integrity of the criminal justice system relies on the courts and not the cops being responsible for punishing offenders. Meanwhile, those who've been through the police complaint system alleging brutality say it is failing, and the only way to hold police to account is to launch an expensive civil action. Jessie Scarlett Rhodes sued police after receiving these injuries during an arrest after a night out with friends in Sunbury. The arrest happened after her husband, who was on medication, started vomiting in a laneway outside this pub. She was tending to him when they were approached by 4 police officers, who shone a light in her face and demanded ID. She swore at them.
And then the next thing I knew, I was violently forced down to the ground. I had a fracture on the top of my nose. I had a concussion. I had grazing and bruising, so my eyebrow and my cheekbone were cut open.
Jessie lodged a complaint with police but got nowhere. Instead, she was charged with assault and presented with a choice: accept a criminal diversion and avoid a conviction, or fight it and risk having a criminal record. Jessie accepted the diversion, but then decided to launch her own action, a civil case.
It was really tough. It's a very long process, very stressful. I felt I had no other option at that stage. I couldn't walk away because I felt like, I just felt like my innocence and it had all been taken away from me on that night, and my rights.
She won, a county court judge finding she'd been improperly arrested, had been thrown headfirst into a police van, had her rights trampled and been subject to disgraceful treatment at the hands of police. She was awarded $86,000 in compensation.
It's not right and it needs to be changed. The complaints situation with how complaints are handled, that needs to be changed.
Assistant Commissioner Luke Cornelius is now in charge of professional standards. He says since we made police aware of the CCTV, both incidents have been referred to the IBAC.
The conduct displayed on the CCTV demanded examination and explanation. The members involved clearly needed to be called to account for their conduct.
It's wrong, you know, what, because you've got a badge and a gun, you can be judge and jury, whatever you want to call it, you know, it's wrong. These guys, they've got everything on them to restrain a person. There's no need for that. You know, all they had to do was let me be.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I just wanted you to know that I am using this stuff under fair use. And also remember to like and subscribe this channel. Also too, keep in mind I do not make any money on YouTube. This is 5 hours work a day, you know, fighting for freedom. And you can donate with PayPal and Patreon. I just want you to think about this. If everybody gives to PayPal and Patreon, Patreon is every month. Actually, PayPal you can do every month. I have 12,000 subscribers. If everybody gives, I can quit my regular job and go full-time investigations on Charlotte County and possibly even more and beyond. So just keep that in mind. If everybody helps out, I can go full-time doing this. Thanks.